Imagine you're in the Sahara desert. The high noon sun beats down on you. You're carrying a backpack. Inside, everything that you need for a week, bar water, which you replenish at checkpoints, and shelter. Imagine that after hiking for about 50 miles, your back starts hurting. At first, it's not much. But then you start to get worried because it's really starting to get quite painful. Fortunately, you're not alone. There's a checkpoint, and you can just about see it way, way, way in the distance. Step by step, you make it to that checkpoint. Spot a medic, explain your predicament, ask for some painkillers, and you are given precisely one large paracetamol. You look at it and you think, how on earth is this going to help me? Because you're not actually just out there for a hike. In fact, you're taking part in one of the most infamous races in the world. You're taking part in the Marathon Des Sables, or the MDS. The race the Discovery Channel once called the toughest foot race on earth. So you sneak off to some shade to ponder life and to lick your wounds. You move slightly and you scream. It's such a loud scream. It's a scream, it's banshee-like scream. It's like a scream like no other. It's absolutely terrifying, and it terrifies everybody around you. Because the medics, they sprint towards you. They are such concern looking on their faces. They're like, can you walk? Can you walk? That is exactly the question I faced in this year's Marathon Des Sables. Because the scenario I've given you, I didn't make it up. That happened, and it happened to me. So, could I walk? Could I keep walking not just for the rest of that day, but for 4 more days, for 100 miles more? So the equivalent of about 4 marathons. Gandhi believed that strength doesn't come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. But how does a person get indomitable will? Sometimes I wonder, could it be something to do with our past? So let's have a look at my past to see if there was anything I can pull from my past that was going to help me through the next few days in the desert. I first heard about the Marathon Des Sables, or MDS, in 2002 when I was living in Melbourne, Australia. In those days, I was an adventure racer, I was a kayaker, I was an ultra hiker. But I was so busy leading my life that instead of taking the most basic step of writing down my goal, I parked it at the back of my brain and promptly forgot about it. I hope none of you would do something like that. It took 4 more years before I heard again about the race. That time, I was watching a documentary, and as soon as I saw that documentary, I was captivated by the magnificence of the desert. But I was also frustrated with myself, for I remembered how I had wanted to do this race, and I hadn't got around to doing it. How could I have wasted all that time? So you'd think now I'd sign up. There's my second chance. Nope, still didn't sign up. Why? Because the documentary also told the story of an Italian Olympic pentathlete and how he'd got lost during a sandstorm in the desert. He was lost for 10 days. He sought refuge in an abandoned shrine, and he was so desperate to survive that at one point he caught bats, ate them, and drank their blood. So, surprise, surprise, after hearing all of that, I was rather terrified. I was like, whoa, can I cope Could I cope with the heat, the terrain? Could I cope with the ration supply of water? And could I cope if a ferocious sandstorm whipped through the desert that could potentially kill me? I let fear, doubt, and a lack of confidence stop me from entering the race. What I should, of course, have done was tackle them one by one, so I could have gone on to live my dream, but I didn't. I let those fears overcome me. Now, 7 years after I heard about the race, so 2009, I heard that there were a couple of guys come into Melbourne, Australia, where I lived at the time, to give a talk about the race. They'd done it before and they were going to share their experiences. I went along. And, well, that night, it was a revelation. I simply couldn't believe it, because I'd been expecting to see some guys who were like Olympians or world-class explorers or some like mythical Greek gods. But no, they were ordinary Australians, a landscape gardener and a recruitment consultant. And I was like, hang on. It was my mind that was putting me down, nothing else. I'd built this race up to something that it wasn't. So now my mind was in place. You'd think, yeehaw, yeah, hallelujah, whatever, Jane's going to go off and do the race. Slight problem, because you see, to do this race, it wasn't just my mind that needed to be ready. My body needed to be ready. And in the past, it had been ready. But now, my body was a mess. Because the previous year, the doctors found a lump. I was on a high surveillance program because so many women in my family had breast cancer, basically all of them. And some of them had died of it. So they had me, the only woman in my generation, on an extremely high surveillance program. And as I said, they picked up a lump. And the doctors, because of the family history, they weren't taking any risks with me. They were like, look, we don't think it's malignant, but we can't risk it. We have to operate. Fine, you think 3 months off, you recuperate, fine. Fine, I wouldn't be a world-class mountaineer, they told me, but everything else would be, no, just fine. Slight problem, I developed complications. A very rare complication called pyoderma gangrenosum. How rare was this complication? The surgeons told me that I was the first case ever in Australia to have this complication after that type of surgery. Another surgeon that I know told me he still hasn't found a medical article about exactly what happened to me. My surgeons thought about writing one, but they couldn't work out why it had happened, so they couldn't publish the article. What did it actually mean for me? A month in hospital, whilst they treated me, and I had these big, huge wounds. And one of the wounds was so big you could basically see my heart beating. You couldn't actually see the heart, but you could see the beat of the heart. And after that month in hospital, I got out, and obviously I was rather frail. But over a 3-year period, I had 13 general anaesthetics. And you can imagine I wasn't exactly feeling my best. In fact, sometimes I'd go to my local shops, and I'd be so exhausted after that trip that as I shuffled home, frail, elderly pensioners with their Zimmer frames would overtake me. At other times, I was so fatigued, I couldn't even make it to my front door, so I had to get the delivery van to come to me. But it wasn't all bad news, because sometimes I was fine, generally in the lead up to the next operation, because one would be quite away in the past, and I've had a recovery period, build up again. So in that build-up period, I could go hiking and cycling with my friends. Only I needed to learn even to temper that, because one time, after way overdoing it, I ended up in an ambulance, getting taken to hospital and put in a cardiac ward for observation. Yeah, it was a rough ride, but that's life. So I realized now that what had happened to me meant that the MDS wasn't even a fantasy anymore. Whilst I had the physical strength in 2002 and 2006, I could have done the MDS no problem. But later, once all that illness hit me, no chance. My own procrastination of 2002, my own fear, doubt and lack of confidence of 2006 had killed my dream. So you might be thinking, how on earth did Jane ever end up in the Sahara? Because we know she ended up there. She's told us. I'm lucky. Because after the last of those operations, I felt so much better. It's as if the surgeon managed to find the last atom of poison in my body and remove it. It wasn't like that, but I can't explain it in any other way. That's how it felt to me. And because of that trip I'd previously taken to hospital in ambulance and my visit to the cardiac ward, I now knew that I couldn't rush things. The only thing I could do if I wanted to rebuild myself was to take time. After all, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I couldn't rebuild my body in a day either. So instead, I developed a step-by-step approach. That step-by-step approach took years. And it got delayed as well. Because what did I go and do? Did my hip in, had to have hip surgery. Suffered lots of other injuries. And I also went and broke my ribs when I went mountain biking on one occasion. So it took a while longer than even I had planned and allowed for. But eventually, I was getting there. I wasn't as good as I used to be, but I was getting there. So I realised I can dream again. And I did dream again. And I dreamt about the MDS. And this time, I didn't allow procrastination, fear, or doubt to intervene. This time, I entered the race. And that's how, this year, I got to be in the Sahara, taking part in supposedly the toughest footrace on earth, though I'm not sure if that still applies. Now you've heard my story, how do you think I reacted when my back went into spasms on that third day? Well, I'll tell you. It only took a millisecond for my mind to remember the journey we'd been on. And my mind was furious with my back. And my mind told my back, you are not doing this to me. We have fought too hard together. We are going to team up and we are going to finish this race. So when those medics frantically sprinted up to me and asked, can you walk? I looked them straight in the eye and I said, yes, I can walk. I just can't twist or turn. So, off I went, up the steepest climb of the day, step by step, ouch by ouch. And I kept going for the rest of that day and the next 4 days. I crossed these sandy plains, I climbed those magnificent mountains, and I traversed stark, barren, rocky furnaces. But I kept walking, and I walked step by step all the way to the finish line. To conclude, some people ask me, so how did you manage to do it with a bad back? And I look at them and I say, well, lots of paracetamol, because medics along the way gave me a whole load more. A codeine tablet a sympathetic competitor gave me after I'd gone ouch once too often in front of her. And thirdly, the help of all the medics again, because they strapped and restrapped my back again and again and again. But some people still don't believe me. They say, but Jane, how? And I think back to what Gandhi said about how strength doesn't come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. And I thought of people who had journeyed on foot in the past. I thought of people fleeing evil, or walking to escape from famine, or walking so that they could try and find a job during the Great Depression. Those people didn't walk out of choice. And those people would have really suffered on their journeys. I had a choice. I could have bailed at any moment because we were all fitted with satellite trackers. And I could have pressed the emergency button on that, and if I had, somebody would have come and rescued me. And within days, I could have been eating at a 5-star hotel. But if I had pressed that emergency button, that wouldn't have been a rescue of me. That would have been me surrendering once again on my dreams. And I was not going to do that this time. Absolutely no way. So I kept walking. Because dreams are important to us. Dreams are critical to us. Dreams aren't small. Dreams are far bigger than goals. Dreams go to our soul. So I ask each one of you, when you go to bed tonight, before you fall asleep, have a think about your own dreams. And think about what you need to do to follow through with your dreams. Think about the steps that you need to take. And tomorrow, start by putting that first step in place. Take the first step, and the second step, and the third step. Take all the steps that you need to take, and step by step, go live your dreams. Thank you.